Buckle up, it's the Insurance Dudes Podcast.
Boom! Kris!
Was I supposed to do it with you?
Oh, it's whatever you want. You don't have to.
Oh, okay.
There's no forced things here.
Fair enough. All right. Fair enough.
Well, welcome.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing awesome.
Love having Dudettes on the podcast, and we don't have enough. We know it, but
yeah, let's get to it.
We need to. So this is I'm excited.
All right. Well, welcome to me then.
Yeah. Welcome to the dudes, and welcome to you.
I'm glad to be here.
Plachy show. Is that it?
Plachy.
Right? Plachy. Okay.
There you go.
I knew it too. Right when I said it, I was like, oh man, I get everybody's name wrong.
You could say Plachy though. That sounds way more like sophisticated and
like the department store, Target.
Yes. I actually had someone call me that on purpose because that's how they thought it was pronounced, and I sort of thought, oh, well, that's nice.
That's awesome.
Well, Kris, before we dive in, it's not that. Why don't you tell us? And I don't know if you've listened to the show.
Mm-hmm.
What is the first concert?
Rick Springfield.
Wow, that was quick.
Yes.
And it was
yes.
And that is great.
Second one was you too.
Oh wow. Joshua Tree?
Yes.
I went to Joshua Tree.
1980.
Yeah.
I went to Joshua Tree at the Coliseum. The
In
LA
Oakland?
Coliseum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the olden days.
All right.
And,
yeah. I did that.
That was
think
fun.
it was Oakland I went to see you too. And Rick Springfield was like at the Warfield in San Francisco or something.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
that's so cool. You're a first Rick Springfield. I love that. That's such
Oh,
a good.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
I had every Teen Beat, whatever Rick Springfield poster I could get my hands on in my
Wow.
youth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
We've had-
awesome.
Yeah, multiple New Kids on the Block, Beach Boys, but no Rick Springfield. So
Well,
that is
need
awesome.
you need more Gen X 80s people, clearly.
That's right.
on your
Yeah,
podcast.
see, we're talking the same language here.
There we go.
He tries to say that I'm 90, but I am Gen X.
No. No. What year did you graduate high school?
91.
Oh, you're a little younger than me.
Oh,
I'm on a
well, you can't
borderline
tell.
that. Yeah, you're borderline Gen X.
He's an old soul, though.
Okay, we'll give it to him.
He's an old
Yeah.
soul.
It's like Gen X is the generation to belong to right now. Like we are the coolest generation on the
Easily.
planet.
Yeah,
Literally.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, let's get into your background. So since
All right.
Rick Springfield, what brought you to where you are now, and take us through that fun journey?
Right on. So I went to San Diego State. I got out of high school, went to San Diego State. I thought I would be a lawyer.
Nice.
This may or may not be appropriate to say on your podcast. Speaking of dudes and dudettes, but I was a poli-sci major for 3 years. And I was studying like Supreme Court justice law. Like that was my big deal. Like I loved it. But
Wow.
as a poli-sci major, you had to do all these other classes that were not as interesting. And I was sitting in my governments of the Middle East class with, 100 people. And I would venture, again, no disrespect, about 89 of them were dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I looked around and I thought, know if this is the life I want. And so I went back to my, again, don't forgive me, sorority house and talked to my sorority sisters and said, hey, I don't think I want to be a poli-sci major. I really like I was the social chair for my sorority. I said, I really like planning stuff and parties. And so my sorority sister said, you should be like me and be a rec major. And I said, I should. And so I graduated from San Diego State with a rec degree and a minor in poli-sci.
Nice.
Wow. I don't know what either one of those are.
No, well, that's all right. You're not missing much. Rec was a great degree, though. We learned about like healthy living, and I got to go on a canoe trip and get credit for it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a good,
Nice.
and it was San Diego. And I worked at the aquatic center the whole time I was
Oh,
there, and yeah, had a great time.
Nice.
So
So
then
you
I
went to the
did,
Bay. So you went from the Bay Area down to SoCal, and then went back to
yes,
north.
I did.
Al
Yeah, I
Norte.
graduated. I was the 5-year graduate of SCSU, like so many of us, and I had to leave San Diego if I was going to take my life seriously. So I had to move back up home where serious people were. But I didn't know what I was going to do. Rec degrees, unless I wanted to be a park ranger, I didn't have a lot I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just got a sales position.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in sales for a few years. I was pretty good at it. And so then I kind of took the next leap and took a management job in managing the people that were doing the work that I had done. And I did that for a while. I was pretty good at that. But I kind of got a pretty bad taste in my mouth for managing at the time. I worked for a person who wasn't the best representation of what leadership looks like. And so I got very soured on the profession of management. I thought, if you have to be like that to be a manager, then I'm out. And so in the meantime, I got pregnant with my first kid, and I tried something new. But I missed the company that I worked in, and I had an opportunity to go back, and I went back in training. And I had actually started taking coaching courses in the mid 90s. Before anybody even knew what professional coaching was. There was this guy up in Northern California who was running these, webinars, or not webinars, workshops. And so I kind of had this parallel existence. I was, successful in my professional career, but I had this personal interest in coaching that I just kept pursuing on my own. And then as I kept ascending in the business, I got into a director role, and then I got into a senior director role, and I had a relatively large team, and I was covering most of Northern California. So I had about 250 people. And I finally married coaching and management, and it was proving itself to be very successful. And so then I was invited to create a coaching department team in this company overall. And so I built my own performance coaching team, which was so fun. And we coached about 4,000 leaders throughout the business and developed them. And then after about 4 years, that business that I was in got in trouble with a bunch of compliance issues and changes in government that was regulating them, as I'm sure you guys can appreciate. And so we saw the writing on the wall. My COO said, look, if you want to get the best deal, you should request an exit package and be part of the first group to go. So I did. And so I got a pretty handsome, healthy severance.
Nice.
And that was a little over 8 years ago. And that's when I started my business. So I've been coaching leaders for a very long time, because I was even doing it, in my day job. And then I was coaching all the managers who worked for me. And I love what I do. And so as my personal business morphed, I initially was doing a lot of corporate development, corporate training, executive coaching for corporate leaders. I also then I wrote a couple of books about dealing with difficult people and managing difficult employees and coaching the difficult leader. And so for a couple of years there, I kind of was the person that companies hired to coach the executive who's a hot mess and causing all sorts of problems, which was super fun. I learned a lot. And then anyway, through the trajectory of the work I did, I've always done a retreat in Hawaii for women to help them sort of balance out the personal and the professional and kind of reconnect to who they are. So and I actually created all the women's leadership content in the business that I worked in. So that's always been a running theme in my life, to support women and help women professionals, because it's close to my heart, clearly. And so then I started working with more and more women who were entrepreneurs. Just naturally, they were gravitating to me. And so that was about 2.5 years ago. I just kind of put the stake in the ground and said, I'm just going all in on coaching female entrepreneurs who have their own businesses, who don't know how to manage and develop and lead a team to get the results they need. So that's what I do now. So I help women build the team, manage the team, and lead the team.
And so this whole role that you've filled here, it came out of the frustration of having the wrong type of management,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so what I find so interesting is they bring you in to help the hot mess, but what else is also interesting is how does the hot mess get to the level where they're the one that okay, let's put this person up
They're
here.
the one
Like,
that's
how does that happen?
running the country.
Yeah.
It's your guess is as good as mine. That is the age-old question.
Mhm.
If we think about I believe that the majority of a lot of decisions about ascendancy within companies is made based on relationships and not skill.
Okay.
And so I think that oftentimes is the case. People will
Okay.
promote someone into a management role because they get along with them better. They trust them. They know them. They have a relationship. And so that's the better person to put in the spot. And then, of course, the truth is there can
The
be,
cycle continues.
there can be really terrible leaders who get results. And
Right.
that can be because everybody's afraid of them,
Mhm.
but they still get the results. So
Mm.
you're absolutely spot on. I think it's a really big problem. And that's always been part of my sort of running thesis is who you are is how you lead. I don't
Okay.
think you separate them. And I think that leadership is an incredible responsibility. I don't see it as a title. I think it's like if I'm signing up and saying, I'm going to take this role, and now these people are going to count on me
Mm.
to help them progress in their careers. I see that as a responsibility. So to me, that requires self-awareness and growth and commitment. But there's a lot of people who have a very different belief system about leadership.
Yeah. So you come in. What happens when you come in and Darth Vader is running the place, and you have to now? Is it okay? We're gonna take Darth Vader and we're getting rid of Darth Vader, or is it we're gonna turn Darth Vader into Luke?
Princess Leia.
We're gonna yeah, Princess Leia. How are? I mean, I can't imagine the undertaking because and there must be some kicking and screaming,
Yes.
right?
And so it honestly, it was some of my most favorite work. It was
Mm.
terribly, and it was really ironic that you pointed that out. It was a good catch, right? It's almost like I was coaching the people who I had worked for when I was young and didn't know what to do about it, and now now I'm coaching that person, right? So yes, in the cases where the business hired me, so let's say they did like a 360 and they got really scathing feedback, or they did an employee engagement survey and they got really scathing feedback, they would hire a coach. So yeah, those first few calls were back to the wall, almost like a defensive animal. I've had
Right.
conversations where people were like they're just mean. One guy said to me, I don't know what the heck they hired you for. This is a
Oh.
waste of the company's money. And he's the same guy a year later who I finally met in person. He was in a different state than and he came and found me where I was on site and said, he had his arms outstretched, just like you guys just did. He had his arms up and he said, Kris Plachy, the hero of my life, right?
Wow.
Because we didn't just save his job, we saved his marriage.
Wow.
We saved all sorts of things because he was not managing himself
Mm.
and people hated him.
Yeah. No
And,
self-awareness
and he
and
was a
just
lovely human, and most
yeah.
people are.
Right.
People don't wake up in the morning and think, I can't wait to be a total jerk today. Like most
Right.
people don't do that on purpose, but they don't have the coping skills, all the things. They don't know how to process their own frustration, so they take it out. Yeah, all that stuff. So
That's it. They're just frustrated, right? That's
yeah,
what that is. It's a
yeah,
verbal, it's an outshowing of how frustrated you are.
exactly.
Now I'm curious to go back to to the positions that you had in working your way up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, especially in the times that we're in, and everybody's trying to empathize with everybody else. I'll never know what it's like to be a woman working in a workplace and knowing what that's like. So, like, honestly, like, what were the struggles that you had as a woman working your way up, eventually managing a 250 person team? And I mean, what kind of stuff did you deal with these jerk dudes out there?
Yeah, I think so. It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it because I think that's how we all learn, right? Is sort of those empathy moments. I think I don't have a lot of terrible stories. I have a couple where I'm like, really, dude. Um, Honestly, I had more challenges with difficult women who were vicious. Because that's, we don't talk about that a lot, but there's a lot of competition too with between women. But I was
Really?
pretty fortunate. Yeah. Um, my success, I think I was lucky because I worked in a startup company culture. And so it really was about performance. Um,
Mm,
and I performed and I built good relationships. There was a whole part of the company that I was in. We were all really young and I mean, it was so fun, but there were lots of mistakes made. People showed up. I just never really indulged that. I didn't participate, but I did have one very specific experience that I kind of was like, dude, then this was our chief HR guy. So he was in charge of HR.
oh, jeez.
And I had never met him before. And we finally met. Excuse me. And he said, first thing he said to me is he said, "Oh, Kris Plachy, all I do is keep hearing your name. It's like spaghetti that's stuck to a wall." It's like, all right. And then I met with him to kind of chat, and we both have twins. I have twins. And he said to me, "Gosh, how do you do it? How do you travel like you do with twins?" And I'm like, "Do you guys that question? Because I know you don't." I'm like, "How do you do it?" I have a very supportive, helpful spouse. That's how we do it. Don't ask me that question. I was like, what? And there were dudes that I managed who I think were
Mhm.
probably more disrespectful. Sometimes I would have a guy in the room just to have more power in the room with me. Um, but I just didn't really indulge it. I didn't let it get to me. And so I guess it didn't, or I was lucky. I didn't ever have any
Mhm.
overt, obvious um, discrimination or results of me being a woman that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. Well, and then probably ignoring it too. I
It
I
should
would imagine like a bully preys on the person that
Uh,
Yeah.
kind of.
And some people don't see it, and some people, there really are terrible things that people do. And so I always am cautious because I don't want to minimize other people's experience because it's legit. Um,
Yeah.
we had a COO. We had all our executive team were men except for one, and our COO was a woman. And so that was also very empowering for our women in our business. Like, okay, like she's the one who created our women's program. Like we had a lot of support. So I don't think we had a huge issue in our business where I've seen it in other places, like other companies I've even worked with. Like one guy I had to coach in his 360. He had one of the comments was, "Please take the girly calendars down off the back room." Like there were naked centerfold pictures in the
Oh,
office.
jeez.
Like that's the stuff, like, really? Like that, does that have to be said out loud?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, different levels of awareness.
yeah.
You said leadership is a responsibility. We actually talked the last couple of weeks about this. We've
Mm,
had people, especially with this year and all the craziness going on, and it's a time for. Seems like a lot of people, especially in our industry, could be a little passive because we
mm,
haven't gotten hit as hard in our industry.
mhm.
Um, And we've been talking about the responsibility we have because we are kind of thought leaders as insurance dudes and dudettes out there. But just, I mean, even if you're a mom or a dad or heck, I mean, everybody's a leader to some point. So talk about like the responsibility we have as leaders. I like that you said that. Like, what is there's probably a lot behind that.
Oh yeah. So I'll use the current circumstances. So when I flew back from Dallas on March 13th because an event I was attending was canceled. That's the week that the NBA shut down. Like it's all just happened, right? That week.
Right. And
then by the following week, everything, especially here in California, we were shut down, right? So I immediately held a free webinar. Can you hear that?
What was that?
It's a pipe. It's a pipe. Can you hear it?
What are you doing, Kris?
Yeah, well, you are in California.
Oh, there we go. It's a pipe. You're cute, Huntington Beach. Okay. It's just a pipe in my house. Is it really loud?
No.
Are you sure?
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll just talk like this. Okay. Where was I?
I derailed you.
Okay, no, it's my fault. Okay, so I held a free call on that Saturday for any woman who's an entrepreneur who's trying to figure out how they're going to negotiate this moment, right? And of course, at that moment, everybody was like, it's probably about 2 weeks.
Right.
And I was telling my clients, no, it's not. You need a plan for at least 90 days. And you need to do a worst case scenario. And you need to get your whatever in gear because your team needs foundation and they need direction and they need clarity and they need safety. And that doesn't exist outside of you. And it doesn't exist for you. So you're going to come here and we're going to work it out so that you can go out there and be a leader in this moment, because that's what people want. The ambiguity and the fear is what has been so detrimental, not just in businesses, but socially. I mean, we're a mess, right?
Yep.
And so leadership matters. And it's kind of like one of those things, like you don't think about it all day. It's like oxygen. You don't think about oxygen, but when you don't have it, you get it. You see what happens in the absence of decisive, empathetic, transparent, clear, directive leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, people make it up. They're making up stories. They're fabricating their own truth. They're whatever. They don't know. So that's where I see that responsibility. And the truth is, right now, for anybody running a business, you don't know what's going on. All of us are making it up, right? Like we just talked about, do I want to go here? Do I want to live in this place? Can I get there? Like, I don't know. So we have to, and parenting is the same. Our kids are all looking at us. I have 3 teenagers. They're like, when's this going to end? I'm like, I don't have an answer, but here's how we're going to negotiate it right now. This is how we're going to run it as a family, because I'm in charge and you need that from me. Yeah.
They need some sort of reassurance, right?
Yes.
And that's they're looking up, and I mean, you're the person. And so most agencies, insurance agencies have, somewhere between 0 and 20 employees, right? So not big, nobody's hiding. And, and so, but they certainly are coming in or working remote, right? Depending on where you are. Mm-hmm. And they do need that. Yeah. Some guidance, some reassurance. I mean, there are less people to talk to. You're not going out anymore. If you go to the restaurant, it's weird because there's like 4 tables. I mean, it's just, everything is so off right now. It's like a Stephen King book.
I agree.
Yeah. So what kind of tools have you adapted into your tool set when you're talking with these people? And then I really want to get hit on the difficult people.
Okay.
Because I need to know how to deal with myself.
Okay. Well, that's another conversation.
Oh,
well, Mr. Greg.
Yeah. So I think that the thing is so much of what I teach my clients already aligned to what we were ready. And all of my clients, and even the one whose company is really we're not sure if she'll make it. And it's simply because of her work that she does in the world with her public interface. They're all doing fine. And some are making more money than they expected to make, which is just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Leadership is a decision, right? Like it's a choice to do the hard things. It's a choice to find the resources you didn't have access to. It's a choice to step into change in those ambiguous moments and provide some level of clarity. And so what we did is we wrote 3-month plans. And we did that in March. And then we executed the plan, and we talked about the difference between strategic planning and triage planning. Triage planning was every Monday. We had to make a week plan. You know, some of my clients who have shops or, you know, places where people come, food, what have you, they had to change every week. Oh, this week we can't let anybody in the building, but we can do curbside. This week we can. And so every week we just got really clear about, okay, what's it going to be this week? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? The good news is you create that for yourself and your team. Now we're focusing on solutions and not the, you know, what the F is going on, because that we can spin out so easily, right?
Yeah.
And then when it got to be Q2, I created a Q2 pivot. And so we just spent the next 90 days going through what we could do in Q2 to, again, stay grounded in being nimble, being flexible, being intentional, you know, and then managing your mind, and then also managing the mind of the business, which is the team and the culture and the day-to-day activities. But leaders have to clean up their own thinking and their own stories that they tell themselves, because if you're feeling emotional and overwhelmed, you can't show up for other people.
I love that the idea of shifting the focus, because it's very easy to focus on the negative and what's happening, all the things we can't control, because and when you do, it's like, and most entrepreneurs have a little, you know, hamster running constantly in the brain. And so, I mean, if that's what you choose to look at, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you have this plan and you have it laid out, I mean, you can't look at that at the same time. We can only hold the one thought anyway. So it's like, just stay focused.
Watch what you, my conscious inclusion advisor who works on my team, Dr. Wise, she tells me all the time, like, we have to watch our intellectual nutrition. And in a time like right now, you have to really be protective as someone who's running your own business of what you let in, and really giving yourself exposure to the thoughts and the leaders and the thinkers that will feed what you want to create versus what you are afraid might happen. So
I have a question on that. So like I tend to keep my eyes down and just run. And I would almost say that maybe I won't pay attention enough to things that I need to make great decisions on. Well, you know, you got the election, there's all kinds of madness going around, right? I tend to just put my head in the ground and only focus on me in those times, and like what I'm doing as a leader and everything, which is kind of what you're saying, but I almost feel that I do it so much that I'm almost opinionless on other things that I should probably stand up for. So I've been wrestling in my mind a little bit about, like, well, how much do I thought and effort do I put into these things that, you know, you don't have control? I mean, you should have some sort of opinion on. I don't know.
Well, I think anything
you know what I'm saying?
You should have an opinion on, you have to just evaluate.
Right.
Like, and it's funny, my husband and I were having this conversation because he said to me the other night, we were making dinner, and he said, you know, you saw all of this happening in March. And, you know, like, we're watching people going back to school and all that, and then they're closing the school, like, and we're surprised. Like, really? What are we doing? You know, and so I do think I got in an argument with a guy once about reading books. He's like, I don't read books. I don't like to read. I'm like, yeah, but you're in a leadership role. Like you've got to like use the engine up here, like get exposed to new thoughts. Like it doesn't have to be books, but I think you have to pick interest in, you know, part of the work of being a leader is really knowing what your values are. Your values are the you know, the operating system that you're making all your decisions from anyway. So I think if you get really connected to those, that helps you direct, like, you know, maybe I don't care about politics, but I really care about environmental stuff or the ocean or the, you know, whatever. Like, and that's gonna get my discernment versus, because I agree with you, it's so overwhelming to know what to give your attention to. I do agree with that.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, as an American, we should put some effort into politics, but I mean, like, regardless of what side you're on, it's a circus out there. You know what I mean?
But yeah,
there's
no,
so
I
many
will tell you how I
emotions.
laser that for myself, because it's funny you should say it. To me, it is all about leadership.
Yeah.
And we're witnessing what happens in a gap when we have a gap of leadership. We're witnessing it. So I too am not about political party. I'm more about like consistency to our Constitution and to what we are supposed to be governed by. And so that's how I think about it. And whether you choose to be like really engaged and go to conferences and call people and or not, or just be clear about what you stand for and don't just go along, that's leadership to me. You know, if someone says something and you're like, no, I'm disagreeing. I'm not going to listen to the jokes about gay people and Black people and Mexican people. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to listen to jokes about blonde women anymore. You know, doesn't mean I think you're a bad person. It just means like, I think we've done that, right? I'm not going to dismiss the importance of people's lives. Like, I think there are things that you just decide, and whether it's just in the relationship you have with somebody when you're drinking a beer or you're out protesting in the streets, you've made a decision about what you want to represent. That's leadership to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point. Yeah. When you start joking about some of these topics, you're definitely, it's taking a side kind of by doing that, because you're definitely taking a side, even though it seems like when, you know, and I talk about this too, is like when we were young, we used to call people names that now there's no way you could say it without the world ending. And it had nothing to do with, you know what I mean? Like the context of the words and stuff, we didn't even know what they were at the time. And there's a lot of sensitivity out there. So, but with that being said, I mean, every generation gets we are getting more and more sensitive, and we have to be aware of that. So we're not going to say those things that we used to say, but I mean, it really kind of, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to take a stand on some things, and then other things, it's like, okay, now I got to readjust my thoughts on this because now it's changed contextually because the time has, you know?
Well, there's so many words that I agree with you. We didn't know what they meant, right? And now I'm like, oh, I had no idea. I didn't know Ring Around the Rosie was about people dying of the plague. Like I didn't know that, right? Like I didn't know.
I didn't know that until now.
Yes, they put pocket full of posies is because it smelled bad and all the bodies in the street. Like it's a whole. Anyway, there's context that we don't know. I agree with you.
Sure.
But what it is interesting, I think, from a white guy's perspective to think about is when white men are involved in those, there isn't a lot of that about white men. There's a lot of those sort of innuendos and jokes that are about everybody else. And so while it isn't, when you say it intentionally trying to be discriminatory or racist, it's noticing that there's been a privilege that you have to tell those jokes and that you don't get it in kind either. Right. So it's kind of interesting. And I think that's the evolution. I actually agree that we have to swim. The pendulum has to go like this before I think it comes back. But right now, hypersensitivity, no kidding, on anything. Like, I don't even like driving anymore because people are like intense and rude and get all bent out of shape on the road. Like, everybody feels like they're like raw for
Right.
one
Yep.
reason or another. Right.
Well, it's almost as if everybody's hyper vigilant in such a way that they want to be able to jump on whatever is said, right? Like up, like you're listening for something to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know that everything that's said is wrong, but it seems like you have to be so careful. And I don't mean jokes and obvious,
Yeah.
stuff, but just like, whoa, whoa, everybody, it seems like we're all at 11 right now, and we need to just dial it down a little bit and just know that, hey, we should all be getting along. And at this moment, when we're all, I mean, pretty much the whole world is in alignment right now. I mean, we are all kind of screwed. We're screwed and confused. So let's figure out how to work together to solve, right? Let's solve this thing.
I
And
agree.
so,
I don't understand. I agree with you. It keeps me up at night. Like, why is this so
such a
difficult?
Yes.
But I mean, it like all this brings up a great point. Leadership is maybe harder to do than ever because it's not like, oh, we have this one guy that's going to solve all the problems for our country. There's not these black and white. I mean, everything's gray, right? Everything has a side, and there's all these forces that are involved in every issue right now. So it's I think it's super important to be a leader and have these kind of conversations and be empathetic, because every side probably has a weird take on it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, open-mindedness is really important.
Yeah.
That you can hear it all and then formulate your own decision and perspective and take action with it and stand by, like have your own back.
Well, I wonder though if people are almost fearful of forming an opinion and then saying that opinion in because there could be retaliation, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
people already are hardwired to not want to do things because they don't want to fail, right? And so then it's like there's this hypervigilance. Like, man, if I say the wrong thing and I'm not trying to, I'm not a jerk, and then so I don't know.
Yeah.
It can be difficult. And speaking of difficult, there's 5 truths for dealing with difficult people.
Yes.
And I am so curious about hearing those 5 truths, because this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I know, Jason and I have some projects that we work on, and you know what? Even today, we had to deal with a difficult person. This was only over the email, but it happens, right? So, how, in a world where we don't really like conflict, also, and then but there are the ones that want to jump into that. So, okay, somebody's being difficult. What are these 5 truths? How do we disarm them? Help us.
Well, first of all,
how's that for a pivot?
we have to ask ourselves what makes someone difficult.
Okay.
Right. So, one of the biggest distinctions to make when we start talking about this is that there's behaviors that people demonstrate in the world, and then there's the label we assign it. So when you said this person is difficult, I don't know if you want to use this example or not. We can use another one.
We can use another one.
What? We'll go back in I'm sure you have somebody, but like the first thing we want to pick is like,
Jason wants to use his wife. Let's do that.
Yeah, I still love that.
I'm just joking. Heather's gonna kill me. No.
Yeah, that's not good. She'll said to me, "Why were you on my husband's podcast?"
She will never listen to this.
Yeah, no, I knew that was
Just
safe. That was safe.
So the first thing people do is we immediately label people. So being difficult is a label, right? You're rude, you're arrogant, you're dismissive, you're negative, you're
a jerk,
entitled, all of those things. Those are labels and we devise labels of what those words mean through our own life experience.
Okay.
So what I think is arrogant, you might just think is confident,
Mm.
right?
True.
What I
All
think is
subjective.
aggressive, you might just think is passionate.
Mm.
What I think is rude, you might just think is direct. So in and of itself, the label's already a problem because now we're not communicating the same thing to one another, right? So
Yeah.
from a manager perspective, if I said to you, you had a really bad attitude today, I'd be like, I don't have an attitude. What's your
Can't use those you statements.
Right, exactly. So what we do instead is we isolate the behavior.
Mm.
So I noticed in your posture and when you were sitting in the meeting today, you had your arms crossed.
Me? Yes.
Yes. Why'd you have your arms crossed? Right? I noticed that you rolled your eyes. I noticed you sighed audibly. I noticed, like with my kids, I noticed that you slammed the door.
All the time, every day.
I noticed that you've been ignoring my texts. And so then we identify the behavior that's observable, like provable in the world, but we let them label it.
Love it.
Yeah. And so then I don't have to worry about telling you something about your behavior. I just need to address the fact that that behavior got my attention and maybe it had an impact. Like, I noticed today, Lucy, you pounded the desk when you were talking about your ideas. I think you might have thought one thing, but other people were experiencing you as aggressive. What were your thoughts when you were doing that? Like, what was your intention? And let Lucy define that for herself, not me, right?
So what are the type of things Lucy would say?
I just was really excited. I was really passionate. They weren't listening to me. That nobody ever hears what I have to say, right? I'm so tired of
Okay.
saying this.
Right.
Just was feeling
It's
really frustrated.
It's so simple, but that is such a game changer.
Yeah.
That's the
I
Jedi
love
stuff.
that.
Yeah. And then
That is Jedi stuff.
is how don't mind me with my jug of water.
I can't even see you.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I can't see anybody.
I'm redheaded and I have big, huge bun.
So she's drinking out of a water tower.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Like it's a
It's
gigantic. No, I'm just kidding. It's awesome.
It's
I just
gallon.
have this little, yeah. That's good though. Then you drank the gallon.
How you label someone determines how you interact with them.
Yeah.
So the way that I label someone changes me, not them.
Right.
Right?
That's
So
true. Yeah.
if I think you are rude, that changes me. I might be standoffish. I might be apprehensive. I might be rude. Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Versus-
totally.
And then whoever the rude person is just going about their business being who they are. They're not affected by that. Right?
Is it also important to acknowledge that person isn't? It's like they're not rude. They're just the current condition is that there's rude behavior.
Through it is, okay, wait, I can tell that really lit me up. It kind of irritated me. I'm irritated because I'm thinking that they're rude or dismissive or patronizing. Instead, how about I just notice this is the words they said to me, and then I can decide, right? Look, if somebody is trying to be patronizing and you tell them, look, these are the 4 things you just said to me. What was your intention there? Now we can talk that out. If I say to you, hey, that was really patronizing. Now all we're going to get into is either, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be patronizing, which isn't helpful, or no, I wasn't. And it just becomes about that person. And really what we're trying to do is explain the way that we're communicating wasn't effective. And then we give them a chance. If they keep doing it, now it's a problem to me.
Right.
Okay. So they do keep doing it.
Yeah.
Then
If they
what?
work for me, then I start talking about how that doesn't align with our values. That doesn't align with my expectations. And here's what's going to happen if we keep interacting. This keeps happening here at work.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I had a client just a couple of weeks ago who had an employee who she would give him feedback on how he was doing and he'd give her the silent treatment.
Yeah.
Who was the silent treatment? Was the
Employee.
leader?
No,
the employee. Oh,
So
that's
she would give him feedback and he'd go stone. And so then she'd be all like, do, 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 like trying to be nice and make up and like, right. And I'm like, oh, no, not playing that. That's the classic. I mean, that's emotional manipulation is what that is, right?
Right.
Talked about how she says she needs to say, look, when I give you feedback, I noticed today when I told you blah, 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 you didn't speak for 2 hours. And I want to talk with you about how that's not acceptable. And then we went through what her values are and the expectations are that she has supplies to everybody. And she decided that if he does it again, he goes home for the day unpaid.
Mm.
And I
And
said,
did
so
she
that,
implement that?
yeah.
Ooh, what happened?
I love that too, because
actually, because he doesn't know he's doing it. That's what he does with his wife. You do that when I don't care. You don't do that at work. Like
right.
we are emotional adults at work.
Yeah.
Right.
I work with,
And,
right?
and we have small, I think a lot of agents have a small business.
Yeah.
They, you're putting out fires all day. You don't have time. This will be the argument. I don't have time to do all this HR crap, whatever. I'll just let it go. But it's a slippery slope.
Oh yeah.
But I love this speaking to the action and then the process that guides that action, as opposed to just you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
They're not babies. You don't treat them like a toddler.
No.
And I actually shouldn't treat a toddler like that, right?
No,
You should
but we
teach them the right way.
say, look, if you want to work, you can do that wherever you want, but please
Right.
here, this doesn't align with the expectations we have with one another.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I think it's, I coach most of my business clients. Well, all of my clients are business clients. Most of them have small businesses,
Mm.
CPA firms, lawyers. I have one insurance agent, vet offices, and that
Carrier.
aggressive.
I noticed you rolled your eyes when you said insurance agent.
Thinking. One of them, but the common theme is that linchpin sort of person in the office, whether they're the office manager or the practice manager, right? Or even like the lead assistant, kind of that person who kind of runs it.
Mm.
That person's behavior is incredibly important to the culture and vibe of the office. And a lot of times founders, entrepreneurs will tolerate a tremendous amount of not very great professional interaction because they know so much about the business that they couldn't stand to lose them because they can't run it without them. And yet the relationship isn't very healthy.
Mm.
I see that happen a lot. And that's because there's been an absence, right, of that leadership. I don't think it takes that long. So I agree with you. That's what people say, Craig, is like, I don't have time for that. But the truth is it really doesn't take very long.
No, it's just excuses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see that in the agencies all the time, where you have the rock star guy that's selling more than or woman that's selling more than somebody else. So it's like, we can't lose this person.
Right.
But it's like, dude, you're losing everybody else because of this person.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that you said that. You have to, that's why behavior plus production. It's not just production.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with an agency in the somewhere in the US where they
don't be too specific, Mr.
Their
Craig.
office manager has basically created an environment that is not good for everybody else and is very competitive and throws the other ones under the bus. So everybody keeps leaving. And the owner thinks that this person's the one that's making it good, writing the most business, doing all this production, holding the glue together. But in fact, it's really the repellent, right? And it's a tough one.
Yeah. But sometimes, I mean, I can't think of an experience. In fact, I had a client just a couple of months ago. He had that person, just had to go. We call them long-term employee divorce. That's what. So we handle them in our practice, in the work I do with my clients. And, inevitably, they all say to me, like 1 or 2 weeks after the people leave, I can't believe how much better it is now that they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it's that whole gut instinct. If you think, if there's just this little thought, I wonder if I shouldn't have that person. Well, you probably should. There's probably something to investigate there.
Yeah. And you're doing all sorts of rework, even if it's emotional rework, to deal with them.
Yeah.
It's just
If you
exhausting.
don't like going to work, then there's probably a problem.
And it's your own company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So that was number, what, 3?
I don't know. We just went through a few of them. So difficult is only difficult if you think it is. And then I like to talk about the thoughts that you think, and then we do the behaviors. I'm trying to remember all 3 of them. One of the other big tenets for me is when you don't have a plan. So a lot of people think difficult people are like a terminal sentence. Like you can't see life beyond them. You don't have a vision for what you're trying to create. So again, if we use the employee example, if I have this difficult employee and yet they're my top producer, or they've worked with me since I started and they know where all the bodies are, right? Like they know everything and they know where all the files are and they know all of it. It's that belief that I can't create a future without them. When really, my mom told me when I was 19, she's like, honey, just remember, I hated the job I had at the time and I felt really guilty. And she's like, you're totally replaceable. But it was the best advice. Like I didn't have to take that on. And I also know that about people. Like I love great team members, don't get me wrong, but I also don't want them on my team if they're not helping me achieve the goals of the business. So you have to be able to see beyond that and know that it can be temporary. And especially if you run the company, you have a lot more authority.
Sure.
And then I think if you give people feedback, even in personal relationships, there are some that we just decide like, okay, this is just who this person is. It's not personal. They're like that with everybody I know. I just get to decide if this is the person do I want to hang out with them or not? Do I want to include them in my social group? Do I want to? But don't do it and then wish they were different. Wishing people would be different than they are is a futile exercise. But if it's an employee and I give feedback and they are unwilling to change to meet determined, communicated expectations, then they have to go. It's okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's being way more intentional rather than doing actions, hoping that you just receive a good, like, I hope I make more money next year, not having a plan to actually.
Exactly.
More.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, and that's probably where it starts, right? At some point, somebody starts a business, or like related to an agency. You start an agency, right? But you don't really think about, okay, so when we're at this level, what do we do next? Like what are the most important things? Well, I mean, at some point, you don't care necessarily to make more money. Maybe it's to create a better culture, or then you start thinking outside and like, how can I serve people more? Or like, it's almost like, we start with one intention, and as our journey continues, we need to reassess those intentions and be very intentional with everything that's going on. Otherwise the situation might dictate you, right? You might end up in a weird place.
Yeah, and that's the evolution of being an entrepreneur is, I sort of teach 3 elements. There are 3 phases. You start as a solopreneur, which is usually you and a shingle and a name on a door and one person or whatever. And that's all about just clients and revenue, man. It's just work, right? Then you go into that entrepreneur phase, which is when we start to become more of a we, and you add team members and you start thinking a little bit more about having processes and policies and, creating and achieving goals through other people. And then I use the next level in my mind is that CEO level of when you are really more of a conductor of the success of the business. You have some leadership underneath you who's really managing how that works. That just sort of depends on how big you want, even if you just have one other manager, right? But you're not in the weeds every day. Maybe you're only working with the top few clients. You're not in the slog. But the evolution of leadership that you have to go through to get there it's legit. And it does require a lot of intentionality about what you want your business to be, how you want to grow, what you want.
Love it. Great. What do you think? If you were going to tell the world of insurance dudes and dudettes one thing that they must do, that they must implement and do for their agency, what would that be?
Well, I don't know if this isn't what you want, you tell me, because
No.
I think that everyone who wants to have a thriving, successful, long-term business needs to learn how to manage people.
Yeah.
Don't give up on your company just because managing people is hard. It's not, people can learn how to manage that. I watch people give up because dealing with people is ew. I just did this on my call with my clients this morning. I made up a jingle. I'm like, managing people is fun. Let's manage the people. Like, I was trying to be goofy about it.
I think you nailed it on the head, though. I mean, a lot of agencies start off with one person or maybe 3 people. And then, of course, they hired the wrong people because they don't even know what they're doing in the agency. And then there's like this evolution. And it's like managing people is tough. But at some point, you got to go, I'm either going to learn how to do this or I'm just going to keep getting beat up. And
you can't abdicate it. You can't hire someone to manage the team for you if you don't know how to do it. You can't. Right. You will fail. Yep. They'll pull the wool over your eyes. You won't know what they're doing. Right. You can't do it.
Well, and you instead of, you're going to manage the people and personalities and not the processes and procedures. And that's what you need to do, because you can't track and measure against their personalities.
Exactly.
Right? You have to track and measure the progress on those processes. So it's excellent. I love
that again, Craig.
I don't even know what I just said.
It was very good. You should listen to it back. It was very smart sounding. Yeah,
very snip that. So, hey, Kris, thank you so much. If anybody, when they want to now run to your website, how do they get there?
Well, you can always go to KrisPlachy.com. I do private coaching. I actually do private coaching for men and women. So my private practice, and I have VIP sort of strategy days too, if people prefer that. And then I have a program that we're starting in about a month called How to CEO. And it's for women, female entrepreneurs. It'll be a live 12-week course with me and some of my teammates and a bunch of really cool guest experts. So if people want to learn more about that, they can just go to howtoceolive.com and add your name to the wait list, and then we'll let you know when we're ready to give you more info.
Yeah.
And that is KrisPlachy.com.
You got it.
For it all.
.com,
Yeah. And I also have a podcast. I probably should tell you that. It's called Lead.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the Lead Your Team podcast.
Cool.
You can find it where you find your podcasts.
Ooh.
Right where we found this thing, right?
So after you're done subscribing to this one, go over to Kris's and subscribe to hers.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on here, and you are now an honorary insurance dudette.
Hey, you've got to check out the Insurance Dudes Inner Circle, coming soon, where you get extended interviews as well as live coffee talks in our private Facebook group. Join the mailing list today at theinsurancedudespodcast.com. Hey, thanks for checking out the Insurance Dudes. Hey, please subscribe. We got some really great stuff coming out.